Welcome to Community Corner on 94.5 Praise, a program where we discuss the topics affecting the Low Country, but also programs and organizations making positive changes in our community. We are pleased to have Mr. Michael Ricks, who is the Director of Criminal Justice at the Technical College of the Low Country. Mr. Ricks has a master's degree in criminal justice, and he has done work on his doctorate in public safety. He is a person who I have great respect for, has been a chief of police of, I believe, 2 different forces, and is now here with us in Beaufort. So welcome, Mr. Ricks.
Thank you, Pastor Moore. Glad to be here again.
Well, we brought you back. I think you were here the last time was in July, and we were talking on the subject of leadership in law enforcement, and there had been many shootings and those kinds of things, and you brought us a lot of information and wisdom, and so we bring you back now on the subject of leadership. And so what say you to that point?
I think leadership is critical, whether it's, it doesn't matter where it is. I think at some point someone is going to step up and have to lead. So if it's leadership in law enforcement organization, or if it's leadership in other organization, or even leadership in the church, we have to have the right person at the right time doing the right thing. So I think leadership is so important in order for the organization to continue to move.
Mr. Ricks is also one of the deacons at Mount Carmel, and he is presently doing a series. There is a book that is written by John C. Maxwell, and it is the 21 most important minutes in a leader's day. He is actually going through and facilitating a series on that book with all of our leaders in our church. And one of the reasons we are here is we simply want to reveal this to the public, if you will, and actually offer the opportunity to set that up and for him to assist any congregation that might want to institute something like that. We want to offer that to any congregation. In my experience, I am absolutely convinced that whether we are in the military, whether we are in corporations throughout America, or especially in the church, I am convinced that leadership is the pivotal point whereby an organization is either successful or it fails. What say you, sir?
I agree. And we're talking about leadership. We're not talking about management. And sometimes we kind of get those two things mixed up. I think they support each other, and I think they're intertwined with each other. But when you look at leadership is more concerned with the people. How do I take care of the people? How do I influence the people? How do I get people to buy into the vision? How do I get them to buy into the mission? How do I get them to row the ship in the direction I want them to row the ship? Management tend to be concerned with the product, and people tend to be a product of the organization. So they all are in it together. Leaders, they look at the people as the resource. Management look at them as product. But, managers need to have leadership skills, and leaders need to have some management skills also. We've started with this John C. Maxwell book, and John C. Maxwell is an author that tend to write books, leadership books from Christian principles, and using the scripture to support the principles that he put in the books. And this really originated out of our men's ministry, which is Deacon White and Chairman Deacon Dawson. They are the ones that runs our men's ministry, and it started from there, and we opened it up to other groups, and then the ladies ministry came along, and now we've opened it up to all the leadership, and we're seeing more than just the leadership come to it. So I think overall people have a desire to understand and learn how to be good leaders. But there's only two types. There's a good leader and a bad leader. The good leaders follow God. The bad leaders follow themselves.
As you were talking, I was thinking of a different background. You having come through the Army in its leadership scale, and myself having been a Marine. But as you talked, it resonated with me that we are talking the same language. When you talk about the difference between leadership and management, I often used to say you lead people and you manage things. And I always would tell our leaders is, look, don't confuse management with leadership.
That's right.
If I had 25 boxes and I lined them all up and I left for 1 year, if nobody bothered those boxes, when I came back, those boxes would be in the exact same place that I left them, because I managed them, I put them there, I stayed there. You can't do that with people.
That's right.
So you have to lead people, and people require input, and you gotta communicate and all those things, and influence.
And if you don't do that, then you find yourself, or you find the organization in a bad predicament. When the leader is not leading the people, you'll find them. And I'm sitting up thinking about when Moses went up and got the 10 Commandments, and the people was left behind. Their leader was gone, and so the people just did whatever they wanted to do. And when he came back, the leader was back, and he was able to get structure in there again. And that's just a biblical example. If you start managing things and you think you can manage people and just leave them, when you leave them, it's going to turn everything into disarray, and the climate of the organization begin to change. But when you lead them and you taking a personal interest in them, then they're going to fall in love with you, and they're going to follow you. And leadership is about influencing. How do I influence people to do? We think we can whip people in shape, and that can work for a little while. But you want to be able to influence them to do it on their own free will. And when you can get an organization moving like that, especially in our Christian world, because our Christian world is all volunteer. You can't say, I'm going to pay you a salary to get you to do this. We're trying to take someone who's volunteering their time, their resources, and their skills to come out and help our organization move. So we have to see how we can influence those things. And it's going to be up to the leader to set that climate. And if that climate is not good, then the organization is not going to move forward.
You speak of setting the climate. And I've always believed, and as we go into Scripture, one of the things that the great leaders in the Bible had the ability to do was to communicate the importance of the people actually doing what they were supposed to do and what they wanted them to do. They had the ability to actually communicate the importance of that for the most part. In the scriptures, it talks about Joshua, who is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. He had to grow as far as his influence was concerned, but the scripture reveals in the end of the book of Joshua, and it says, all the days of Joshua, Israel did not sin. In other words, they did not stray away from God.
That's right.
Because, and I am convinced it was because of his leadership and his ability to influence the nation of Israel, that we must follow God. Would you?
I agree. Not only that, the leader is going to set the climate for the organization. whatever the leader does or fail to do, the organization is going to follow it. You know, we take that for granted sometimes, but if you think about your family, and you think about your kids, your family is going to follow the direction you set or the direction you fail to set. If you fail to set a direction that you all are going for that family, then your family is going to be all over the place. If you don't have any rules about being in at night, if you don't have any rules about doing the right thing, if you don't have any rules about, we're going to praise God, then you're going to find your family members out on the streets, sitting on the corner. They have to have the leadership. And then the organization is the same thing. You have to set that climate and you have to set that tone, and who's ever in charge is going to lead them in the right direction or going to lead them in the wrong direction. I was in a meeting this past week with one of the major leaders, and we're sitting down talking, and the person who was talking about the climate and was saying that the climate may need some adjusting and was trying to put it tactful. And the leader came out and said, no, it is on me. And since it's on me, then we need to fix it. And, from that point, wherever that leader want to go, I'm going with them, because that leader has just established that if I mess up, I'm man enough to accept what I mess up, and we can move on with whatever's going to happen. That was David in the Bible. David made mistakes, but he would stand up and say, hey, here's the mistakes I made. And the nation flourished under David. David was a good leader. Back to our families. As leaders of our families, we're going to make mistakes. Or we made mistakes before we even got the family. It's just our family members are making some of the mistakes we made, and it's stressing us out. But if we come forward and admit to the mistakes we made and move on from there, hey, I made the mistakes, I suffered the consequences, it's time to move on. Sometimes with that, leaders tend to want to overlook the mistakes they made or just want to brush it under the rug, and we end up like Saul. We end up feeling that we're bigger than the organization, and no one, including the leader, is bigger than the organization.
I think I told you this morning. This morning I was over on Paris Island and got to visit with the commanding general and review the recruit training process, all of those things. Today was my first encounter with the new commanding general. And I sat at Morning Colors this morning, never having heard him speak or anything. I knew that his background was not one of recruiting or recruit training. But he walked out this morning, and this morning he set the climate. You could tell that the climate of recruit training and recruiting has been set by this guy. And he walks out in front of this crowd and he goes off. And I leaned over to my wife and I said to her, he's got it. He has got it. I will guarantee you everybody is about to get on board and go the right way, because just as you said, he communicated exactly what the depot is all about, mm-hmm. and what recruiting is all about, and what the expectations are in recruit training. You heard it. You heard it at Morning Colors. We went out to graduation, and everybody he talked to, I just listened to him. He's conveying the same thing.
Same message.
So everybody is getting the same message, and that is the change of climate. Mm-hmm. It is the leader's responsibility to let everyone know these are the standards in this, in his case, military organization. Mm-hmm. Out in civilian life, it is whether you are working for General Motors or whether you're in the bank or whether you're in the police force, that is what is necessary. Or in the church, it is even more important, like you said, because in the church, just about everybody around you are volunteers. So you have to communicate, okay, why is it important? What we need you to do. Is it important? Why is it important? And how can you fulfill whatever the requirement is. And there we don't have rank to order people to do something, so you have to influence people and let people know what you are doing is very important. I often say, and you've heard me say, that I really believe that God has called us to different stations, different positions, but one position is no more important than another.
The other one. That's correct. I agree.
Why is that? Why do you agree, sir?
And the reason, what I used to say in the police department, and it's so ironic, I told the lieutenant, I was chief of police in Tuskegee, and Alicia got assigned to Keesler, so I resigned and went to Keesler. And in policing, you either start on the top or you start on the bottom. So I had to start on the bottom. And within 2 years, I was in detectives. And the lieutenant came in one night and he said, I need to ask you a question. And I said, okay. He said, you were chief of police. I mean, you were in charge. And now you here. I'm not saying detectives are bad, but you just doing detective work. I said, well, being a detective is just as important as being the chief. We all have a piece of this pie. This is one big pie. We all have a piece. I don't need to be over there trying to flavor the chief pie and tell him piece of the pie and tell him to eat it. I need to be flavoring my piece of the pie. When we stay in our lanes and do our part, then the organization flourishes. It's just when we start getting out of it, or we make one position more important than the other one, then the organization or the tire on the vehicle, one is inflated more than others, so the vehicle doesn't ride right. But when you have all the tires inflated to the same level, then the organization runs smooth. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the choir director need to be telling the pastor what to do. That's not what I'm saying. But the pastor has the pastor role. And that position is just as important as the choir director. The choir director has to come in and get that choir organized, teach them the song, make sure when they get out there, now everyone sing on Sunday, the pastor give his sermon. When the congregation leave, everything flows so well that the singing of the choir, the greeting of the greeters, the message from the sermon, all of it has resonated in the spirit, and the person go out there and start functioning like God wants his people to function. If we begin to say, okay, the pastor position is more important than that choir director position, then the person leave there with just what was left with the pastor, what the pastor took out there. Or if we say, the choir is more important than the greeters, then people leave out of there just with the songs in their heart. And that's like those seeds that Jesus talked about that was spread it out, and some fell on the rocks, some fell on good soil. You take in some, but when all of it is the same and has the same importance, then the people get all of the seeds. We take those greeters for granted, but they set the tone for the church. I mean, some people don't get a hug all week, don't get a smile or a hello, and you walk in the church and there they are with that big smile saying, welcome. And that opens them up before anything even starts. So all those positions has to be the same. The thing that we find sometime in church, and this is Mike Rick's opinion, is that we have people that volunteer to lead these different committees or different parts of the church, and they have a good understanding of what it is, but not so much as a good understanding of leadership. And what I'm saying is, we may get that choir director. Now that choir director can either sing good, play the piano good, play an instrument good, and some of them can do it all together, play the instrument and sing good. They can get everyone rocking in the same direction. But when it comes to taking care of the people or come to that leadership, we haven't taught them or trained them how to do the leadership. So that's what we want to get to. We want the choir director to keep doing that. But now we want to enhance those leadership skills that when they're not at practice, he or she still has a concern for the choir members. Let me call and talk with them. When I came through in the Army, the squad leaders and the sergeants, they used to have what is called a job book. And in that job book, they had the names of each one of their subordinates. Then they had the spouse name, they had the kids' name, they had birthdays in there. It was all about, you need to learn that person, then you need to take care of them. And when you start taking care of people and they know you're going to take care of them, you can tell them to run through that wall and they're going to do all they can to go through that wall. So those are the things we're hoping that we can enhance in our church. And I'm not saying our church is bad. We're not doing those things. But this is an opportunity to help build people, build the leaders that are there, then turn around and build future leaders, people who think they want a leadership. God has already anointed us and gave us external leadership skills. We just need to get those internal things to know that we can do it and that He has it for us to do.
You talked about in the Army, you had that workbook, and in that leader's workbook, they had the names of all the people and all the information. That is because the Army required you, in order to lead, to know your people.
That's right.
And look out for their welfare. It's no difference in the church. People have basic needs, and leaders are supposed to be meeting the needs of people and helping to guide people along. You talked about the greeters. I cannot tell you of the number of people that have come to me and told me that their experience in visiting Mount Carmel was just great. And they didn't tell me because the sermon was great. And they didn't tell me in most cases that the choir was great. It was always that a greeter or an usher made them feel welcome and made them feel at home. And I always say, we don't know what the condition and circumstances that people left from when they left home on Sunday morning. And so therefore, sometimes people have not heard welcome and we are glad you came. They've not heard that in a whole week. Some people have not heard I love you and I appreciate you. All week long, they've not heard it. And so when they walk into the house of God and someone express a genuine concern, it changes that person's day. It changes the climate, if you will. And therefore, hope starts to spring eternal in that soul.
And I agree. There's a book called Cold Blue, and it was written by a person that was converted to a Christian. And he kind of looked at it. He said, the church is just a big ER. It's an ER for people who are caught up in their sins and they need relieving. So you never know who coming in. If you got these people coming in and they got all kinds of sin wounds along the way, you never know what edge they're on. Some of them are on life support as they come through the door, and they just need that good greeting to bring them in. And then they need that stamp of God while they're in there. And as a church, that's something we should be doing, but not just right there on Sunday, but throughout the week. But that greeter is so important. And I don't want to take away from any of the other components of the church, because they all are important. I study our ushers really well. I don't let anyone know that I'm studying them. And the whole usher board has the demeanor of Deacon Green. If you watch that usher operate and then you watch him operate around the church, they all operate like him. And when I look at that and start thinking about it, I was like, wow, that is the leader setting the climate. And whatever type of leader you are, it flows to you. And when you go in there, it's two things that you're welcome when you look at those ushers, and that you're taken care of. And they do it in a silent and quiet way. They're just quiet about what they do. And then there are so many other components to it. So I'm excited about where we're going with the leadership and teaching them about leadership. Leadership is basically influencing, and that's all it is. And the John C. Maxwell book has a lot of components to it, and we're hoping I'm hoping that I can just stick to the book because I've done a lot of reading in part of that public safety leadership PhD that I was working on, and I'm trying to stay away from a lot of the theories and things that they had and stay with the components of what John C. Maxwell put in there, because they are really good. And each chapter adds something else to your life. And it looks like our church, what we're doing now, it looks like the people who are attending, they are excited about it. As they read the book, they can see some of the things. They can see some of the things that they do, and they can see some of the things that they don't do, that they do plan on doing.
It is a book, and I don't normally. There are many things that I try to stay out of commercializing many things, but I will recommend this book. The 21 most important minutes in a leader's day.
The 21 most powerful minutes in a leader's day.
The 21 most powerful minutes in a leader's day. I would recommend that book to absolutely anyone, and I will guarantee you, if you read it and you actually take it to heart, you will never, ever be the same again as a leader. Those of us who have spent many years in the military, I am absolutely convinced I am a better leader as a result of having read that book. And so Deacon Ricks talked about, the people who are going through this course in our church. I am convinced that our church is going to be much better off. It's not that we have problems, not at all. We have been extremely blessed at Mount Carmel, but I want us to operate at the level that God has created us to operate. And how do we do that? We get as many people as we possibly can to see things through the eyes of God. Not the eyes of James E. Moore, but through the eyes of God. And so as we study the Word and as we apply those good practices from Scriptures and look at those that were not so good,
right,
as to the way we ought not to go, I am absolutely convinced that then we will flourish to a level that we otherwise would not have dreamed that we could operate.
And the thing about that is, at that point, we allow God to make us to who He wants us to be, and the position doesn't make us. So that was one thing with the new officers that were coming in that I will emphasize before they even hit the streets is, don't let the badge make you who you are. You make the badge what it is. So with our leaders, we can't get those positions. Now the position has made me who I am. We have to go in with what God has given us and make that position great. And then the position don't become bigger than life. The position don't become bigger than you. Now you are controlling the position in who you are. And with that, then the good things that God has put in your life will flow down to the people. That's what, and you mentioned Joshua. I'm a huge David fan, King David, because King David, even though he was king, being king wasn't as important as being a child of God. He just enjoyed just hanging out with God. That was what he enjoyed. That when it was time to kill Goliath, all he knows that Goliath was disrespecting the living God. Somebody need to kill him. If no one else gonna go kill him, I'll go kill him. He killed him and then didn't think much more about it. He didn't linger over, hey, look at the success I did. He went on to the next thing. Oh, Saul has put me in the castle now. Oh, okay, so how do I do this? That's the way our leadership should be. If the position make us who we are, then that's where we stop in our leadership climb. But if we make the position great, then God is going to bless us with bigger positions.
We often talk about, positions of leadership in Mount Carmel is not there for you, and that we don't want a bunch of people just sitting around, tugging on their collars and everything, and look at me and I'm in charge. But really, when we become leaders, we actually become servants.
That's right.
And that is the model that Jesus gave. And so I often say to everybody, I am supposed to be the greatest servant in Mount Carmel. I don't mind sweeping the floor. I don't mind picking up paper. I don't mind cleaning the commode. All of those things. I eat last because I really believe that Jesus did not eat before the disciples ate.
That's right.
I just don't believe he did it because that is simply him caring about the people that he led. And so if it worked for Jesus, I know it'll work for me. It has to be
good.
And so as you said about David, I love David. As flawed as he was,
that's right.
The guy had a heart.
Mm-hmm.
The scripture says he was a man after God's own heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, and that's how God continued to bless him. If you look at the accomplishments of David compared to that of Saul, there is no comparison.
Right.
David's accomplishments just overwhelmed that of Saul because of their attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Saul had the attitude that he was where he was because he rated it.
Right.
David
and he was entitled to.
Yes, he was entitled. He was prideful. As you read the scripture, he was prideful. David, on the other hand, he thought, little old me. What have I done that God has blessed me with all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And so even in killing Goliath, he didn't see it as a prideful thing. He saw it as a thing whereby he had tried to please God.
Right.
And that God had blessed him to kill Goliath because Goliath profaned the name of the living God. And so that's the way I look at life, and that's the way I look at pastoring is I'm not here because I rate to be. I'm not the pastor because I've been so good and because I'm so smart. I'm the pastor because God has had mercy on me and has shown me kindness. And so I dare not believe that I'm entitled to anything except to try to please the living God.
Serve God. It's so ironic also that when you serving God, it doesn't matter where you go, he will bless you there. Looking back at David, now David killed Goliath. It encouraged the nation of Israel. They chased the Philistines who had fear. First, it was the nation of Israel that had fear. Now it's the nation. It was the nation of Israel. Now it's the Philistines who has fear. They chased them. David ran off later on, join the Philistines, and have success with the Philistines. When you serving God, it doesn't matter where God puts you at. He will continue to bless you if you humble yourself and follow him.
Because he said he would.
That's right.
In his word, he said he would. In the 28th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, he says, if thou wilt hearken to obey God and to do these things, to keep his statutes, he says, all these blessings shall come and overtake you.
Right.
There are too many black people in the church who actually they are seeking and they are running after blessings. You don't have to do that. All we have to do is we have to put our mind and set our mind to following God. And then the blessings of God will overtake you.
That's right.
David.
That's right.
In the midst of the Philistine, he was blessed.
In the midst of the Philistine. And we tend to, we could follow God and we get in that leadership position. Then we start having trials and we go back to what we know. And that's to argue or to do whatever we can. No, we have to go back to how we go back to God. And even if we're wrong and we're the leader, we have to stand up and say, hey, I was wrong. And if you do that, you're going to have people that's going to jump up and follow you. If you never do that, then your organization is going to believe that I should never have to say, I'm sorry, even when I mess up. And to some degree, I need to find someone to blame it on. And with that, your organization can't stand. It can't survive. And it won't survive.
James says, humble yourself before the mighty hand of God. Draw nigh unto God, and he will draw nigh unto you. It is exactly what you're talking about. Most people think humbling ourselves before God is just praying. No, it's not. It is me having the ability and the humility that if I'm wrong, I will stand up and tell everybody I was wrong and please forgive me, because I mean it from my heart. I repent to God and to people. And if I do, then I've humbled myself before God. And I know we have an assurance that he will continue to bless us and to keep us. But when you said we go back to the things that we knew, and that is to rely on ourselves. We have failed ourselves all of our lives. We fail ourselves, we fail God, and we fail other people all our lives. So I know I can't cut it. And so therefore, I become convinced that I just need to rely upon God and God alone. He is sufficient.
And through all situations, even when things get a little difficult, we need to rely on him. When I took over Moss Point Police Department, before I even took over, there was a bad article came out from one of the other department leaders. And initially I got angry. And then when I thought about it, that battle wasn't mine anyway. And the next thing I knew, that person was gone. And as long as I didn't go in and try to fight that person on whoever was coming up against me, if I didn't fight them, it kind of worked itself out. Most of the time, that person ended up leaving and I didn't have to say a word. It wasn't until I stood up and tried to defend myself is that things stopped working, because I stopped relying on God. Leaders that rely on God and stay focused with God, their organization will flourish. Whoever are under them, all the people under them will benefit from it. And you're going to end up, if you are a good leader that follow God, follow God's principle, allow God to use you, you're going to lift the lids off people's lives, and you're going to watch those people grow and flourish to beautiful things. We just have to be humble enough as leaders. And sometimes we don't get focused on that. We make that leadership position about us. And no leadership position is about you. That leadership position is about God. And just like he put you in there, he can take you out of it also. And it doesn't matter how many generations of your family was in the church. It doesn't matter. And I just think as leaders, as we look out and make other leaders, we have to look for those leaders who tend to serve God. Because when they serve God, God is going to bless them and bless the things that are around them. They're going to make things successful.
You were just listening to Mr. Michael Ricks, who is the Director of Criminal Justice at the Technical College of the Low Country. Join us next week for part 2 of our discussion with him pertaining to leadership. Thank you for joining us for Community Corner on 94.5 Praise. And don't forget to join us every Thursday at 7 o'clock for the latest in community programs and highlights. If you want more information on today's topics or guests, you can find it on our website at praise945.com. May the peace and blessings of the Lord be yours.